for melodic heavy metal. Playing it heavier, louder, raunchier, faster. This is the Signals of Intuition.
There's new Geoff Tate's Queensryche right there with Cold, the debut single off of Frequency Unknown. You're listening to the Signals of Intuition, your home for melodic hard rock and heavy metal. Right now on the line we have the singer of that song, Mr. Geoff Tate, who was the singer of Queensryche for more than 30 years. They're going to be at the Diesel Concert Lounge in Chesterfield, Michigan on Saturday, May 17th, so make sure to check that out. So let's get Geoff on the line right now.
Hi, this is Geoff.
Hey Geoff, it's Brandon calling from the Signals of Intuition. How you doing?
Hey, good. How's it going?
Oh, not too bad. So first off, what sort of set can we expect from the band? I know last year you were touring for Mindcrime's 25th anniversary. Are you still touring in support of that, or are you doing more of a greatest hits set this time around?
Yeah, we're still doing the Mindcrime set. We'll be doing that to the end of the week, actually. And we finish up that and take a break, and then we'll be coming back for the farewell tour starting, I guess, in August.
Do you know what the plans are for the set in that one? Are you still going to keep it primarily Mindcrime, or are you going to expand it and sort of cover more of Queensryche's whole discography?
Yeah, we're going to kind of cover more songs of the discography, throughout the Queensryche history.
Do you guys play any songs off of Frequency Unknown in the set, Cold or In the Hands of God or anything like that?
Yeah, we will on the next run.
Oh, okay. And will you include any Geoff Tate solo material in that?
No plans to do that at the moment.
And who is in your band right now? I know in the past Rudy and Simon have had to sit out for certain times during the tour.
Yeah, Rudy and Simon are with us. Randy Kane on keyboards, Kelly Gray on guitar, and Robert Sarzo on guitar.
So right now I'd like to jump back in time to your early days as a musician. Before joining Queensryche, what bands did you play in? I know Myth was one of them, but I've also read you played in others, cover bands and things like that around Seattle. How did you get started playing in bands?
Let's see. Well, I started in high school playing in bands, primarily in bands writing original material. That's kind of where I started. I played briefly in a cover band, which ended up becoming Queensryche later on. And we just pretty much played a handful of shows before we went and start concentrating on playing original material.
And then jumping ahead to Queensryche's first album, The Warning, what was it like working in London with James Guthrie, the famed Pink Floyd producer, as a hot new band? What did he bring to the table and the music as a producer?
Well, we chose him primarily because of his work with Pink Floyd, and he was pretty instrumental engineering on the Wall and the Final Cut. He was a great producer, really. He was very inventive and had a lot of creative ideas in the primarily in the recording end of things. The technology aspect of it. In fact, that was the first time I'd ever used a computer in the studio before. He was very well versed in that, and of course we used some of the very best studios in London at the time. Angel Studios and Abbey Road, of course. That was really an amazing experience, being a young musician. And of course, very familiar with the Beatles and, working in their studio, really. It's really pretty phenomenal, walking through that place. And, we were one of the last bands to utilize the console that was used to record a lot of the Beatles stuff. And after we did our session there, they pulled that thing out and replaced it. But it was really, really just, you felt like you were part of, rock history, being in that place.
Right. Do you remember what was done on the old Beatles console?
Everything. Yeah, everything on the album. We did a lot of vocal and guitar overdubs in Abbey Road, and we did the orchestra parts that Michael Kamen contributed. We recorded there at Abbey Road.
Oh, I see. Now, since you're touring on Mindcrime's 25th anniversary, I was wondering if you'd talk about how that album came together. Where did the inspiration come from for the story and the characters in Mindcrime?
Yeah. Well, I was living in Montreal at the time, writing that story, and primarily was inspired by current events that were taking place. At that time, Quebec was going through a kind of semi-revolution. There was a very active group of people that were interested in Quebec separating from the Union of Canada, and so they were basically a terrorist organization. You know, they're blowing up cars and kidnapping, extortion, things like this, and it was very much in the news and in conversations with people who lived there, and you couldn't get away from it. Really, it was everywhere. So that was the backdrop of the story, really. So I wrote the story while living there, and then went back to Seattle in the spring. I guess it was '87, and presented my story to the band. And after a little bit of convincing, they all kind of got on the same page, and we began writing material for the album.
How did the label take it when you told them that you were delivering a concept album this time around?
Well, I think they were fine with it. You know, they were just looking for us to find ourselves, really. You know, back in that time, it was the industry was radically different than it is today. And it was pretty common for, bands to get signed and then, take a few albums to kind of find themselves musically and also to find an audience. It took 3 or 4 records typically for that to happen. So I guess they were just, the label was open to us finding ourselves, really, and then that's what we were doing and did.
The next album, Empire, was arguably Queensryche's biggest album commercially and opened new doors in terms of airplay, Grammy nominations, and the like. How did your own life change as a result of this newfound fame at the time, and what sort of impact did it have on the band?
Well, we toured a lot. I think we toured for about 18 months straight on that record. And we were used to touring, but this was a new record for us, as far as dates and places we went. We were involved in a lot more big festivals. We were part of the Monsters of Rock Festival that toured throughout Europe and South America, and played in front of some just immense crowds. Throughout Europe, it was very common to have 40, 50, 60,000 people at the show, which was amazing to be part of that. And then when we played the Rock in Rio Festival, that was 250,000 people. Quite an experience, I have to say.
After all the success of Empire at the time, I've read that you were unsure if you'd return to the band to do Promised Land. Is that true?
Yeah. The band really, through the getting to this point, had been working, just nonstop for years and years and years. And we finally got some financial success with Mindcrime, and then a lot more financial success, with Empire. And so everybody was in a place financially where, we could afford to take a breather and kind of step back and look at where we've been. And I think through the constant touring, it took its toll on everybody, kind of physically and emotionally. People, were making huge adjustments in their lives. We all came from nothing, really. And so all of a sudden being able to, buy your own house, was a huge step for everyone, and have money in the bank and figuring out what to do with that and how to do it right and not lose it all, was really kind of taking precedence over, working on new material. So it took a few years before we kind of gelled again and became interested in and focused on, writing music. And I personally was kind of going through a time where, again, I'd accomplished so much. I thought, coming from where I did and getting to this point now, I was trying to figure out, well, what am I going to do next? What makes sense? And, I wanted to really expand musically, and, some of the guys didn't. It's typically the people that don't contribute the most who, don't want to, explore further. So there was a bit of friction there that had to be dealt with and overcome. But we did get it together, managed to come out and work on Promised Land and create a new album.
What were the sessions like for that album? I know obviously it was done quite a bit differently than some of the other ones where you guys rented a cabin and that kind of thing.
Yeah, well, we wanted to, the idea was the band was so fragmented at that time, and people were, not being able to commit, fully to rehearsal and recording and that kind of thing because of other responsibilities that they all of a sudden found themselves with.
Right.
People were starting families, getting married, starting other businesses. And so the idea was to get everybody together, and be in one place where there wasn't any distractions and you couldn't leave. So managed to talk everybody into going to this island. We rented a cabin and moved all our studio gear into it and set up shop really and kind of sequestered ourselves on this island so that we could focus.
Now, jumping ahead a few more years, after Here in the Now Frontier, when EMI went out of business and had to drop the band, Chris DeGarmo left. What sort of void did his departure leave within Queensryche?
Yeah, that was a rough time. Well, his departure was a huge hole, of course, because Chris was a major contributor to the music, the writing, performances, the business side of the band. He was really a mover and a shaker in all those categories, So with him leaving, there wasn't anybody to do that stuff, and so it was quite a shock for us all to, one, understand that, and then secondly, to figure out a way to make the band work, He was kind of the buffer zone, between the different personalities in the band, where he could kind of bridge the gap, in communication with everybody and keep everybody kind of, focused on what the goal was, which is a real talent to have. And when he was gone, it was chaos for a while there, trying to figure out what to do. And, we didn't have a record company. It was the first time we'd ever, not had a record company. And then shortly after that, we lost our management as well. So we were pretty much just kind of floating adrift. It was a scary time, to figure out, what to do.
Right. And then jumping ahead even further to your first solo record in 2002, that was obviously a very eclectic piece of music. Why did you choose to do a solo record at that point, and what was sort of the influence for it?
Well, I should have, in retrospect, started my solo work years earlier. And if there's probably one regret I have in my life, it's that I didn't focus on that earlier in my life. I tend to be one of those people that, I throw everything I have into whatever I'm doing. In this case, the band Queensryche always took precedence over anything else I was doing in my life. In 2001 is when I decided, I'm just going to do this now. I've got some time, and I really feel the need to do something different musically and kind of get this out of my system,
Mm-hmm.
So I pushed ahead with it and made that record, which I love that record, and did a short tour of it around the country as well.
Now, in 2009, you guys did American Soldier, which I thought was a really interesting concept. What was the inspiration for that album?
It started with a conversation with my dad, who was a war veteran, started in his military career as a Marine in Korea, and then joined the Air Force after that, and went to Vietnam. Growing up with him, we grew up, in the military world, and
right.
But my dad never talked about it. He never would talk about his experiences. So years later, I'm visiting him in Oklahoma, and we're sitting out on his back porch, drinking some iced tea on a warm Oklahoma afternoon, and he just starts telling me about Korea, in the 1950s, and this is the first time in my life he's ever talked about it. And I'd asked him many times, he used to started telling me stories, and I stopped him and grabbed my recorder, and I recorded the conversations. It was a wonderful experience, actually, hearing this stuff, and it kind of was a situation where I got to know my dad, quite a bit more than I'd ever known him, through him sharing what he experienced. And so anyway, fast forward, I went back home, and I'm playing this audio recording, for my wife, and who was also in the military. She was in the Army. She said, this is really very special. You ever thought about, making an album about the military experience? You grew up in the military. I was in the military. Your dad was in the military. Maybe it might be a good concept, for an album. And that got me thinking about it. And, next thing I knew, I was doing interviews with different soldiers all over the country and putting together the album.
Did any of your dad's stories actually wind up on the record?
Yeah. Actually, he's on the last song on the record called "The Voice."
Oh, okay.
That's my dad talking.
And now, coming up to the present, you finally worked out a deal with your former bandmates after a nearly 2-year-long court battle. How does it feel now that an agreement is reached?
It feels great. Yeah, actually, really good. It never went to court, which is good. We managed to come to agreements and a settlement. So now, after 2 years, I know what I'm doing, in the future, which is a great feeling, because it's very unnerving not to be able to put a plan together, a solid plan, at least for me, because I'm pretty goal-oriented. So yeah, I feel really good about it.
I've heard you have another solo record in the works. Have you started writing, and do you know what the direction of the music's going to be?
I've got all kinds of things in the works, actually, and I'll be announcing over the summer, solid plans as to what's going to happen. But yeah, I'm constantly working on new music.
I obviously don't want to delve too much into it because you've got to announce it. Do you think it's going to be something more conventional, like more Queensryche in sound, or will it be something more like your first solo record? Or will it be maybe several things?
It's going to be something very different. I'll just say that.
Fair enough. Do you have any plans to feature any of the band members currently playing with Queensryche right now? Or will this be something totally new?
I don't know yet. I'm going to make that announcement later in the summer.
Okay. Fair enough. And other than this solo album and the tour you have coming up, the farewell tour, what else do you have in store for the future?
Well, the farewell tour ends, I think, July 30th or 31st, somewhere around there. And I'm pretty much going to disappear for a while, I think. Yeah, I'm going to do some traveling, going to go to Europe for a while. And pretty much that's what's on my plate at the moment.
Yeah, that's great.
All right, great.
All right. Well, Geoff, I want to thank you so much for taking the time out to do the interview. And, I just want to tell you off the record, you've been a tremendous vocal influence to me. The first time I heard Take Hold of the Flame, it just blew my mind. And I sat there and said, I've got to learn how to sing like this.
Oh, great. Thank you.
So thank you so much for taking the time out, and hope to see you in Chesterfield.
Sure. All right. Thanks, Brandon.
All right. Thanks so much, Geoff.
Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.